It's a tough sport. It's not for everybody. You got to be a little sick to love this game, and we got some sickos.
Welcome to NFL Daily, where we are standing tall on our Brian Thomas Jr. draft evaluation from a couple of years ago. I'm Gregg Rosenthal. I'm in my garage. I'm talking to Ollie Connolly, who does great work every week on our show and also for his own Read Optional podcast, where he's already broken down the receivers. That's what we're talking about on this show. And you spent 12 hours talking just receivers. Ollie, do you think we can do it in less time today?
I think we can do it. That was light compared to the linebacker group, the safety group, but this is an incredibly fun receiver draft. You can just keep digging and digging and digging, and John and I did, and we were able to crank out 12 hours.
And I've held off listening because I wanted to kind of hear things fresh and just throw things off of you. But I am, now that I've gone through the receivers, really looking forward to hearing what you say on your show at more depth than we'll do in today's show. But why I thought especially receivers made sense for their own show, we could do different skill positions. Those are always going to be fun. But they're the class that kind of deserves all the time this year. It's just not that deep of a running back, tight end, or quarterback class specifically. And it does just feel like if you peel beneath the layers of this class, as you keep going, there's just good player after good player. And I feel like there's not as much of a difference, and maybe I'm crazy, we can start here, between like some of the first round talents and some of the third round talents as I personally would want. Because I feel like it's just you pick the flavor that you like, and you could almost make an argument for a lot of these guys.
No, I agree with you. I think in my top tier, which in this class is the traditional third tier, so that quality starter bucket, I have 7 guys in there. There's not usually that caliber of depth in the quality starter bucket. And then I think once you get out the first round and kind of the top 3 or 4 names that have become the consensus, it really is a pick your flavor between guys who kind of do the professional stuff and maybe don't have the high wattage upside, and then these kind of height, weight, speed burners, and they are in the eye of the beholder, and they could be whatever you want them to be. And yet the depth just keeps going beyond that. So you get this little cluster of guys who could be anything you want them to be. You can talk yourselves into them. Guys who could just plug and play and start on a Sunday next season. And then as you keep going, even down into the 70s and 80s of this draft order, there are viable slot starters, boundary starters. They are just everywhere in this draft class.
And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm curious what those that tier comprises, like what 7 players they are. But I'm actually going to start at number 2. First, I'm going to ask, do you have Carnell Tate as your first receiver?
Yes.
If you're ranking him. I know you put him in tiers and whatnot. I do want to talk about Carnell Tate. But, okay, now that I know that, I actually want to start at the number 2 argument. And I know it's different flavors and scheme and all this stuff. But I think it's a fascinating starting point because of what I just said about this receiver class, where it is hard to kind of separate all these guys. So we're going to do superlatives today, and I'll start with kind of just a very basic superlative, which is complete the sentence. My wide receiver 2 is
Makai Lemon.
Okay. Now, convince me why Makai Lemon from USC stands apart among a really good group.
Yeah, it's really clustered, I think, after Carnell Tate, and even he, I think, is a similar strand to kind of all the guys we're going to talk about mostly today. I just think with Lemon, there is a different degree of kind of fluidity and explosivity and a more well-roundedness to his game, fewer obvious flaws, and even the things that were maybe concerns at USC, I think play a lot into the scheme, play a lot into the system, play a lot into the quality of the quarterback play. Even if you just go and look at the Notre Dame game, you see everything you want to see in an all-around 3-level receiving threat. The ball doesn't come his way anywhere near as often as it should do. He's playing some of the best DBs in the country, the guys who will go in the first round and high in next year's class, and he's just frying guys all over the place. Short area speed, toughness, after the catch, at the catch point, everything you want to see, I think he can do. And I just think he fits more of the modern brand of offense where you can move him around the formation, he can play tight and attached. I think he's got enough separation skills to go and play outside. And then he has that yak threat too.
Right. And that all makes sense. And I struggled with him and Jordyn Tyson, who we'll get to specifically, although they're quite different in that, all right, what is separating them from me? When I think what's the best thing that I saw about Lemon, who can do it all, natural hands, he's very smooth, he's very tough to take down. And I thought, like, wow, it's crazy, like a top 12 pick or whatever he's going to be, top 15 pick. And the best trait I can think about him is balance. Like, it really stands out that he is tough to take down, but it's not necessarily the profile that you always see out of a guy getting taken that high. And maybe it's just because, you bring the baggage of some hype that you hear ahead of time into it. But I wanted him to make me feel a little more. But it sounds like he makes you feel plenty.
He does make me feel plenty. I think the balance is important for one. And then two, it's a position of stop-start speed. That is just the name of the game of the position. It's change of direction. It's deceleration. It's how quick can you accelerate? How quick can you hit the brakes and kind of rip out of the brake? And I don't think he's as explosive as some of the other guys in the class, whether it's Concepcion, even Tyson at a bigger size. I think he's just more explosive out the brake. I just think he's got more subtle change of direction, more fluidity, more natural kind of one step one way than jab back step across the face of a DB. And so I think you can already picture him, and the NFL doesn't play an awful lot this way in 2026, but he could stand in the slot, third down for your life. It's a two-way go, inside-outside break. We're playing Julian Edelman football, and I would feel the most comfortable that he would find a way to get open and stay open and then go and create after the catch. And then if you want to play him close to the formation, more of the deep crosses, a lot of the deep in breakers, more of the DJ Moore style Ben Johnson football, I think he's really comfortable in that vein too. And I don't think you can underestimate the toughness, the kind of linebacker mentality he brings to the position in an era where you have to go inside, you have to block, you have to be willing to dig out linebackers and safeties at the position. And you go through the rest of the class, and that's just not a standout factor on their film or in their profile compared to the Lemon.
So there's some like Puka comparisons. You feel in that? You like that?
I like that. Yeah, it's not so bad.
DJ, I like when you and Jeremiah are on the same page. And in general, Makai Lemon has lightly settled into like a consensus wide receiver too, but it's not really that much of a consensus. But initially, DJ had him first, even ahead of Carnell Tate. He ended up backing him off, but he has him in his top 10 overall players.
I think I understand that because with Tate, you have more of the true boundary traditional receiver. Could he carry the heavy workload kind of outside the formation where usually the superstar alpha dogs play? I think with Lemon, to me, is he going to fall into a Khalil Shakir bucket where it's a lot of manufactured production, you kind of force feeding the touches, which was a lot at USC? Or will he become more in the Ladd McConkey style where it's a smaller type body type who's traditionally plays in the slot but can actually move around the formation? You can design a big chunk of the offense around him, but when it is third and must have it against man coverage, he can just get open really quickly and then go and create.
It's funny that Khalil Shakir is now turning into one of those players that gets comped to I've seen like 7 different players in this draft get compared to Khalil Shakir, but that shows he is an archetype and he's a good one. And yeah, it's tough to, like a guy getting compared to Puka is tough because his instincts are ultimately what makes him so special. And that's the hardest thing to evaluate going from one level, I think, to the next. And yet, if you were going to say who has great instincts in this class, Makai Lemon would be a great choice. I wanted to start it too, partly because, I'm not ready to drop, like, I don't know. I still want to watch a little more. I feel like you could always watch more, but you really get rewarded going through, the all 22. And the guy who made me feel the most, and I think ultimately where I settled on as my second favorite receiver, was Casey Concepcion.
Yes.
Because, like, that's one where it really rewards you to watch him not getting targeted because he's just always open. He's so freaking open. And the burst is just crazy. His ability to tempo in and out is crazy. And I know he's had a lot of drops, but he's the guy where I see it and I think just, okay, that's special. I feel like that's going to translate. And it's in a very different way than I mentioned at the top of the show. I thought Brian Thomas Jr. just moves different. And George Pickens, for instance, I had as my wide receiver 2 in that class because I just thought he moves different. And Concepcion is a much smaller player and a different type of player. And you can be wrong here, but I'm no scout. I don't have the time also to go through 7, 8, but I can see that Casey Concepcion moves different. And I do think that will translate. And I do think he'll get drafted a little higher maybe than he's getting projected out there as sort of a borderline first-round pick.
Oh, he's definitely got, I think 23 around there is the complete floor, and I would not be stunned if he goes significantly higher. I think as teams put the board together, there'll be plenty of teams who have him as the second guy. Some teams might not be fully in love with Carnell Tate and just that profile of more smooth, glidey player than, as you're saying, sudden, explosive separator. I love Concepcion. I think the speed leaps off the film, as you mentioned, instantly. The way I think he's more nuanced than that normal style of player is given credit for. He was put into an ideal offense to give him a ton of movement routes. They created a bunch of separation for him pre-snap with formation and motion and movement, but he just moves differently. You mentioned it. And I think he's one of the guys where if a GM does pass, because there are concerns about the catches, and maybe we can get into that, and concerns about the drops, he is going to break your heart in week 9 when you look up and he's just frying people all over the place. I mentioned before about how Notre Dame's got these 3 unbelievable DBs. One of them's going to be a top 5 pick next season. He completely cooked every single one he went up against. It would have been a 400-yard game if his quarterback, Marcel Reed, could throw the ball and find him down the field. I mean, at every single level of the route, he just torches people over and over again.
That's the tape that really put it over. So that makes sense to me that you put that out, because it's the deceleration. I think he has to be the best at like slowing down. Texas A&M, I should have mentioned from Concepcion, but he started, and then once I started doing some digging at NC State, and that helped put it over the top for me, because he lit up the ACC as a true 18-year-old freshman. And there are a lot of numbers that suggest like the guys who can break out and I like having a couple seasons in their college career where they did dominate, even if there's issues, because that's what an NFL career is like. It's not all going to be like your last year in college. And for you to just have that sort of I'm better than everyone else on the field ability when you're 18, joining a new league and new level makes me think, okay, I think he can do that and still look as different at the NFL level. Occasionally you'll be wrong with guys like this. Kadarius Toney was sort of in this mix for me, but I think he's a much better route runner and real receiver than a Kadarius Toney was.
Toney was more loosey-goosey. He could kind of levitate to places. It was kind of unnerving the way he could move his body and contort in different ways.
Toney got me more at the NFL level. It was really his rookie year for the Giants that was like, wow, he makes these other NFL players look like fools. Whereas Concepcion, I think, has done that pretty consistently at the college level, even as a freshman.
Yeah, and at NC State, he was more of a true slot where it is that Edelman-type football where you take 3 steps forward and you break inside or outside and it's all sudden burst off the bounce. At A&M, they really designed the vertical passing game around him, and it is all this breakout deep in the route and then snap off and just go and find grass, go chase grass down the field. And I think you get a good sense with him of reading coverages on the fly, knowing how to attack individual defenders, knowing how to attack the coverage on its own. And so I get there are concerns about the catching technique. There are concerns about just the drops in general. But I do think he's got a different speed of football brain. And then he's flying compared to everyone else. And you mentioned no one decelerates, snaps out the break better than this guy. And he will have 3, 4, 5 yards of separation. You go and put on the Miami film. That's the best DB room in the country, the most connected DB room in the country, just fighters and scrappers and athletes everywhere. And he creates chasms of space against the best players.
Yeah, just extremely sudden. And I was trying to think of comps, and I'm like, is it a more polished Zay Flowers, which is like a great player to me.
It's Zay Flowers' usage because he hasn't faced a ton of press coverage. I think there are some concerns with guys with length. If he's playing outside, can guys just get in his frame and kind of slow the feet down? I think that's a legitimate concern. But with Zay Flowers in Baltimore, as with him at A&M, you see them doing all the creative stuff you can do with formation and movement to get him free access out in the route. And if he gets out free, you're not catching up to the guy. So I think it's that. And I also think it's with some of the subtlety once he's out in the route, it's a little bit like Kayshon Boutte, but if you added like jetpacks to him, if he was like a supercharged Kayshon Boutte. So I think it's somewhere between those two players. And I think the play style and how you would adapt your offense around him, I think would be a bit in the Flowers mold.
And you mentioned the returnability, and if you're watching on YouTube, we do have some nice clips and showed that, and I think that'll be a great value add early in his career, especially. The drops were considerable in his last year in college. I mean, he had a lot of drops. I'm talking myself out of it because I think there's a lot of plays where he looks like he has great hands, so that like it doesn't. I'm not a technique guy, but there's some guys that have a lot of drops where it just looks like they're not comfortable catching the football, and like it's consistent among every catch. Whereas Concepcion, I don't necessarily see that. It seems like more of a concentration thing. It hasn't been like every season as bad in his college career either. And we've also just seen a lot of great college receivers and NFL receivers who drop a decent amount of passes. And the harder thing is to find everything else that the Concepcion has.
Yeah, I would rather bet on the separation than the drops alone. I think the catching technique is a real thing. I think he's a clap catcher, and that's a problem, particularly down the field, even though he tracks it well. I think that the clapping is bad there. But the drops to me that are where there's, okay, this could be a problem at the next level. I think it's more anticipation and when the sight line is blurred. I don't want to bore people too much, but those second level throws where you're ripping in front of a safety over the top of the linebacker and it's hit this landmark, and as you fire out the break, the ball is going to be on your numbers. That's what's happening. I just don't know if he's reading the game as quickly, and so it takes him by surprise that the ball is there. In part, that could be the quarterback who does not play with anticipation. Maybe he's not expecting the ball all the time. But when it's a bit blurry in the middle of the field, I think is where you see the ball will just fire off him. And it seems like it got onto him too quick. And because he's doing a clap rather than kind of putting his body weight behind the ball will just ping up in the air. So I think that is a genuine problem. And I think the technique is something that can be worked upon. But I would so much rather bet on a guy who has 5-6 yards of separation comfortably often. And bet that, well, say he puts 2 down. We'll live with that. We got 120 yards every couple of weeks.
I mean, he is always open. And so, yeah, that's, if it's not obvious enough,
He's also a tier 1 troll who loves going 1-to-1 with corners and laughing in their face and embarrassing them. And if you get him on 1 rep, he will fry you for the next 7 and giggle at you as he goes past.
I like that a lot. I'm glad you brought that up because that is something I wrote down in a corny way, which is just like, he has athletic arrogance is another way to put it. He's a football player. Like, so just there's something about that I like. He's a so okay. He's a guy that he's in motion so much, and you just get the sense, and I could just see it at the NFL level, and you could see it at the college level. Like when he's in motion, it's just oh no, what's happening? The defense is just like, oh man, he's going, and you just can imagine a lot of different OCs in the NFL thinking, okay, I can use that. All right, let's keep going. Let's get back to Tate. So you have him first. You have these 7 guys in a first round-ish bucket, and is he just in that bucket with you, with all the other guys, but like at the top, but kind of in the same tier? And if so, why do you like him ahead of the rest of the guys?
Yeah, he's at the top of the quality starter tier, where I don't see kind of the true blue alpha in what would be my impact starter tier. That is your Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase. It's just so special coming out of college. I think he's a tier below that, where it's more to do with just the route prowess, the intellect, the understanding, the suddenness, how he gets open through all 3 phases of the route, which is just different compared to most college players. There's just a way he moves, the way he feels the game that I think separates him from a lot of other players, but he doesn't quite have that top end twitch and explosiveness out of the break, where when you get that kind of intellectual smarts package in the body type of Malik Neighbors, that's when you move into more of the special tier.
Yeah, he was a guy who, when I went through it, I loved him, and I could see why he would just be the guy has really great traits and has the fewest holes and would be the top guy. But then as I took a step back, I thought about that he's not, he's a little lighter, he's not super fast. He's not really like a great yak guy. And so if you add all that up, that's not normally the profile of a guy who's like kind of the locked in wide receiver 1. And yet I wouldn't push back from anyone. The body control, everything that he can do, he looks like a guy who's going to make a lot of sense in today's NFL. It's just not normally the profile of the guy who kind of gets put number 1 consensus wide receiver in a good class.
Yeah, I just think that the football intellect is a step above some other players in the class, and it's wrapped in a really good athlete packaging. So that I think that's what gets you the reliability that pushes you above some more of the maybe boom or bust traits and elements of other guys' games, and so it kind of artificially pushes the grade up to put him as the top guy in the class. You look at from the release package, you mentioned the body control, he catches absolutely everything. I do think there's way more yak potential in there, not a huge part of the game at Ohio State, and he's not the most explosive athlete with the ball in his hands, but he's really quick transitioning from catch to run. I think he's tough. I think he can do more in that element of the game if it's designed and it's these kind of crosses and drags and you get him a free runway out there. And then he's just the best blocking receiver in the class too. And the way the game is played at the moment, I think it's really important to have guys who can play tight and congested to the formation. They will leave him one-on-one against an end, ask him to kick the end out and hold the point until the back is through. He will do that no problem. He will go and dig out linebackers. He'll go and dig out safeties. Just with the way the game is played, and if you're looking for that ideal number 2, I think that's where he fits. And he's kind of like the best possible number 2 you could add into a team, and has some elements of being, I think, a 3-level threat. I think the double move stuff, the smoothness, how he sets guys up down the field, I think he can create big separation down the field and then cook in the middle of the field.
Yeah, I wrote that down a few times, just how fluid he is to change directions and in control. And his contested catch numbers are a joke. So it's tough to just bet on contested catch as your main thing, but if that's part of an overall package that you're a very complete player and you're good at that. He reminded me a little, and it's absolutely uniform and number scouting and thinking about this draft. And I was like, well, maybe he could land with another Ohio State number 17, Terry McLaurin. I don't know if they're really similar players, but they're just both like smart, complete football players. And that would be a fun combo if Washington wanted to go there.
I think his skill set to me is a little Romeo Dobbs-like, and I think it just depends on how you value that. It's not his fault that he's in this draft class where he becomes kind of the number 1 guy by consensus. If Romeo Dobbs was in the draft today, knowing his skills, would he be the number 1 guy? I think that's how you have to kind of view him. And the position is so important. He's going to go high. He's going to go in the top 10. But if he was in a class with, true elite athletes, would he be the number 1 guy? Probably not. Would you want as the Commanders or whoever? Would you want to have Romeo Dobbs on your team? He just got paid a bucket of money to go and be a valuable piece for a good offense.
You want more than Romeo Dobbs, I think, from Carnell Tate if you're taking him that high.
No, I would expect that from him. I think he's more talented than Romeo Dobbs is, but that's the kind of general overall skill set where it's not this A+ trait coming out of your ears. It's more about the intelligence. It's more about the subtlety. It's more about understanding how to attack DBs and create some late separation in the route.
Do you have any concern about him versus press, and any concern that just the numbers were quiet the last, suddenly the Ohio State team, which it's hard to believe, didn't win the title. They just lose 2 straight at the end, and he was relatively quiet. Wasn't targeted a ton in those games. So I don't know if anything stood out to you in those 2 final tapes for Tate.
The press thing, I think, is a problem. He's fortunate the league is 70-80% zone coverage, so there's not a whole bunch of third for your life type situations in press man coverage. That's why he's not in that kind of elite impact starter tier bracket, is that he doesn't just destroy people off the snap. I think he can get swallowed up. He wants to play kind of shrink the frame and one swipe, and that's kind of all that's in the bag. And so I think he's got to find more release patterns with the feet and with the hands to clean a lot of that stuff up. What I do love, though, is he takes that stuff really personally. And so when someone just like kind of mothballs him, you see this in the Penn State game, he will just get got and get put to the floor in press coverage. When he's then given a chance to go and give some back in the blocking game, he kills people. He wants to get after it. He takes it really personally. And I think in the modern league where it's a lot of condensed sets and you're not seeing an awful lot of, hey, everyone's split outside the numbers, it's press coverage all the time. I think you can live with 5 or 6 so-so reps against press coverage where the play design is doing a lot of the heavy lifting if he can just feast against zone.
It also can't hurt that we heard Jackson Smith-Njigba was a relatively low ceiling prospect when I go back and look. And that even Ibuka last year, that was like the idea was like, well, yeah, he's going to be consistent. He's going to be great, but he's not like a real, in early last season, all he was hitting big plays and looking like a big playmaker. So Carnell Tate, I don't want to focus on the negatives just because he's wide receiver 1. He is our wide receiver 1. Look, we hit 3 players in like 25 minutes, so that's a much faster pace than your 12-hour show. Let's take a break, and we'll come back on the other side, keep breaking down these receivers. Back on NFL Daily. We're timing up this show with Matt Harmon, big fan of over at Yahoo and Reception Perception. I noticed that he was a big Concepcion fan yesterday too. I was like, I wish we had already taped this show. I was already on this corner, but I think it's going to be a popular corner, unfortunately, for me, who wants to just have a special take. Let's talk about the hardest evaluation, and this. I'll let you go first on this one. Who is the significant player that you maybe just struggled with? Doesn't mean it's like negative or positive, but you think it was the hardest one to kind of come to a final decision on.
even setting it to one player is difficult. I think I have Chris Brazzell, Chris Bell, and Zachariah Branch as kind of the three finalists.
That's good. We could talk about them all here. It doesn't matter. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Why Brazzell to start out, who is a long striding receiver from Tennessee?
Yeah, so he plays in the goofy Tennessee offense, which already makes things really difficult, where it's these really detached receiver sets where he's playing on the sideline. There's about 3 routes in the route tree. They run these sleeper routes for half the game where you just don't run a route by design so that you can sleep on your side of the field, conserve some energy, and then you can run really fast down the field the next snap going at tempo. So that makes it pretty difficult to begin with. And then just his effort ebbs and flows during the game anyway. And if you dig through even more of the detail of it, he's tipping plays constantly. So he's either sleeping or not playing with urgency, or based on what he's doing with his gloves, based on what he's doing with his stance, he lets you know if it's run pass and whether he's getting the ball or not. So that is already difficult to throw into the evaluation. Then it's just jaw-dropping stuff from there. The movement skills are absolutely out of control. It is size, speed, fluidity, short area twitch. He is not, to me, just a straight line burner in the style they've sent to the league recently, right? Whether it's Jalen Hyatt, Dante Thornton, on and on they go, Cedric Tillman. I think he's got more nuance to his game. I think he's a bit more subtle than the guys they've sent in recent years. So it makes it very tricky to fall in love with a guy again because of just the pure movement skills are different to pretty much anyone in the class at the size he's playing at, when you have to factor in all the elements of the offense and then just how engaged he is in the game as well.
Yeah, he is 6'5", 200 pounds, and he ran a sub 440, I believe, like a 4.35 or something like that. The long speed's crazy. A two-lane guy who actually put up some pretty good numbers with Michael Pratt. I went back and looked at some of that tape too, because they didn't use him as the same way that Tennessee did. So he gets caught, when you watch him, like, sometimes, and again, there's not a ton of press coverage, but it was almost fun. Sometimes, like, he literally got stuck. Like, it looked like it was Velcro, and just the play is over, and that's a concern. But if you just flipped on the Georgia game, and we saw one of the long touchdowns there, and there are a handful of long touchdowns from this last season where, to use your words, it's just a joke. Like, you would have thought, oh, this guy's a top 12 pick. He is just making cornerbacks are bouncing off of him as he scores and dances 70 yards down the field. And it was like, okay, well, that looks like an NFL player. That looks pretty good.
It looks pretty. I mean, if Al Davis was alive, he'd be the first pick in the draft. That's the kind of athlete that we're talking about here. And he is the full gas off the ball. What I think he's got compared to some of the other long striding, explosive guys down the field is he can really sink and get out the break. When it is a comeback, a curl, a return to the quarterback type situation, he can really sink and get out of there. Now, he's not shown an awful lot of that just because of the route packages they ask him to play in. There's barely anything playing to the middle of the field. Sometimes when it is the middle of the field, he asks out the play. He doesn't want to stick his nose in there. There's not much in the blocking game. There's willingness. There's some tenacity. The technique is pretty dire. And it's just not a key part of their offense. They just ask him to take plays off. So it's difficult to see how that just fits day one into an NFL system. But the talent and just the general athleticism is undeniable.
I'm checking as you're talking. I believe he was the guy that Chris Sims. No, he didn't put him first, but he did put him third overall. So that's fair. I mean, look, if it's a choose your flavor type of draft, someone's flavor is gonna be Brazzell, who on the consensus board is 50. But if you told me he ends up going 31 or something that wouldn't be surprising at all.
No, I mean, you can't teach the height and speed, and he is the ultimate gas off the ball guy in an actual sizable package rather than just being one of the pocket rocket guys.
So you said Zachariah Branch is in this group of hardest evaluations, which is interesting. Spent time at USC, and then he was at Georgia last year. I find that interesting that you find him hard to evaluate because he's certainly a type, but what about him gives you trouble?
So for the audience, he's the 5'8", 178, something like that pounds. I think he's built like a running back. He's got this he's short guy. He's completely stacked. He looks more like a back, I feel, than a receiver. And just the way he was used both at USC, where it's pure gadget, then at Georgia, where all they're trying to do is create punt return right, punt return left. It's just pure screen, the odd crossing route, not being able to see him run a more diverse tree, I think just makes it difficult to try and figure out where he is in the NFL. Is he does McCall Hardman, Jimmy Horn, Trayvon Austin? Is there any more to the game than just, can he be more in the Wan'Dale Robinson bucket where he has real serious speed off the snap and you can be a vertical threat from the slot, and that is a valuable commodity to have if you can get it on the field? Or is he just a package player you're going to take in the second round, and in 3 years you're going to look up and say, we should have just took a less exciting, less explosive player and actually had a professional in the offense?
Snuck into Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. He's a little lower than that on the consensus board. Look, he's exciting. Steve Smith had him as the number 5 receiver. I started to look around the day of our taping at other evaluations, once I felt like I was done with these guys. Because, I mean, he has track speed. And the way he runs, it is interesting. You say, like, as a running back, like, I know he's small and he's not running over guys, but just his footwork is violent. Like, his change of direction is violent. He is someone you could, I mean, I guess he's much more athletic than a Khalil Shakir, but like he in a perfect world, he could do that. You can find a couple little slot fades on the tape, but I guess you're right. It's not a ton of them. It's not like a ton of volume.
It's not a ton of volume. And I think sometimes when we get into draft season, you get the really electric guys. You do get caught up in the design touch world. And it's a really small part of an NFL actual offensive game plan where you're just washing out reps. And once you start sending in the design package guy, the defensive coordinator has eyes as well. They have alerts as well. They know he's coming in. They can prepare for what they believe the package is going to be. Everyone's on high alert. So I think he has to have a real vertical presence to his game as well. He's got to be able to blow the top off a defense, or at least rip the coverage apart in 2 deep shells to create big voids of space underneath for everyone else to go cook. And because he just wasn't used in that role at either spot, it's hard to get a real feel for what is necessary in that.
Yeah, I think he had 5. I adjusted him last. I remember. I think he had 5 like downfield throws that he caught. Like, I guess that's doesn't sound like a lot, like 20 plus, but there was a little bit of that. Definitely some juice. Like, if it's a player like this who's fitting into a very specific bucket, and you're comparing him to Wan'Dale, which is an interesting one. It's like, man, he better have that juice. He better have that extra stuff that is a difference-making quality. And I do think he has that. So I think he's going to be a fun player to watch. And then your third player in your hardest evaluation was?
Chris Bell out of Louisville.
Yes. I don't know if it's that hard. Just give me some Chris Bell. I mean, that's an NFL player. It might not work at all, but that's a player I can imagine on an NFL field. I mean, he is big, strong, and fast. He's coming off a torn ACL, which is part of the hardest evaluation, I would imagine. But what is it more about, like, the way that he plays that you find tough? Because, man, he is intriguing.
Oh, he's incredible. The upside is completely through the roof. The upside is
Yes.
A.J. Brown, a bully ball receiver who is incredibly explosive after the catch, and explosive over like the second and third step, kind of meanders into routes, sometimes doesn't seem to be that interested, completely hates his own quarterback. I get it. I understand what Chris Bell is thinking, but snap by snap, he is losing his mind at how bad.
How do you know that he hates his
because
quarterback?
He is leaping up and down in the middle of plays that the ball was not thrown in his direction. You see that normally every couple of plays, kind of premium look, maybe 2-3 times over the course of a season with a receiver. The heads will go to the sky. The heads will drop. He is leaping up and down in the air mid-route, frustrated that the ball didn't arrive to him.
Well, I happened to watch Branch right after Chris Bell, and they had that frustration with their quarterback in common because Miller Moss was the USC quarterback. It is very confusing watching college tape now when you're not like that big of a fan like me. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's the same guy who was kind of ruining the Zachariah Branch tape a second ago is now starting to ruin the Chris Bell tape. But yeah, the Louisville prospect, and he got the ACL injury right towards the end of the regular college season, got surgery early December. It's an ACL, and there just aren't many guys built like him that can catch the ball in stride. There was a couple of the slants that he caught and went now, and that's where you think A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf or something. You're just like, holy cow. If he had not torn the ACL, like where is he in this mix? Because I just feel like the NFL would fall in love with him.
Yeah, it's more to do with the consistency. If you just put on the Miami game, and I think that's the best, most athletic, kind of pro development. So to watch it and say, what will it look like on Sundays? I think you've got to watch these guys against Miami. He put the team on the back in that game. He was fully engaged for a full game. And you mentioned some of the burst with the ball in his hands. I mean, he rips through. 2 linebackers come to crush him, rips through both of them. The safeties have no shot. He's completely gone. Doing that at that size with the bully ball physique, with the power that he has, it's just not normal. I mean, so if he was fully healthy, I do think over the course of the draft process as he tested, he would have been right up there. I do think there's an element of he's the I can fix him boyfriend. That there's an awful lot. He's so ill-disciplined. He's got so many penalties season after season. Every game, every drive, every other play. It's just a different prospect from snap to snap. Both the effort, the technique, no route ever looks the same. So the talent is just so off the table good. It's unbelievable, but the consistency and trying to understand how engaged he was. How was that the situation? Why did Louisville have this unbelievable A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf type athlete, and they never thought to design their offense around him? Jeff Brom is an unbelievable football coach. He never thought that I'm going to game plan around having this really special athlete. We're just going to have him on drags and sits and just kind of have him return to the quarterback as a big-bodied kind of power forward type player.
Well, that's why you have scouts to go figure that out. That's why we have analysts like Ollie to help me out, because I'm grading the flashes here. I would be the ones falling in love because, there are a lot of back shoulder catches. Like he doesn't look like he has, I would say, good hands. It's a plot. Like he looks like a football player. And then you think about A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. It's a silly thing to compare. They didn't really plan their offense around them in college either. I don't know what was happening back then. How did those guys go so late, by the way, Ollie? What was up with that?
If you remember DK, people thought he couldn't turn. He had no flexibility.
I mean, he's not the complete player at the NFL level. I love that. All right, my hardest evaluation, and you can take me off of it, is Jordyn Tyson. I did want a little more out of the prospect who, is expected to go pretty early, Arizona State. His quarterback, I think, complicated his evaluation a little bit, certainly in his last season. I was getting frustrated, when the backup's in. And he's on the consensus board at number 14. Daniel Jeremiah, I believe, has him in his top, 15? Where did you have him kind of in your pecking order with the other receivers?
Yeah, I had him lower than consensus. He's still in the starter tier for me, but he's behind Concepcion. He's behind Omar Cooper. He's behind Makai Lemon.
Okay, well then, that makes sense to me. DJ, by the way, had him 17th, which is very strong. He does have him behind Omar Cooper, but solidly in the mix. I like him, but I just wanted him to be like a little more for the profile in terms of the athleticism. And like I saw a comparison. This is probably unfair, but it was from Ben Fennell, who does good stuff at NFL Films, and he was like, he reminds me so much of Tyler Boyd coming out of college, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of see that. It's like I want a little more than that from a high level prospect that has these injury concerns, where the hamstring got him at the end of his last year in college. He had a complete torn knee ligaments earlier. He broke his collarbone at one point. That does add up like a little bit more. So what do you think I'm missing? Because you still have him very solidly ranked, and he is very good, but I felt like I wanted a little more.
I think he's really smooth for the size. I think he tempos the route really well. I think when he's fully locked in and engaged, and he's another guy where when he's the primary target, there is a different level of urgency than when he's just kind of a part of the offense. He can really explode out the break, and he can hang in the air like nobody. I think he's a true acrobat, and there are, in the style that he runs and the way he attacks the ball in the air, there are kind of just like flashes, just glimpses of Odell. That's truly in there. That kind of special player exists in Tyson. It's just, to me, far too infrequent, which is why I have a hard time having him as high up the board as most people do. I think the flashes are really exciting, but the flashes are offset by the durability concerns. It's not like Concepcion, where he's open time after time after time. You're just hoping that the ball will find its way to him. I think he does get locked down more often than you would want. I think his technique comes and goes. I think he gets disengaged in the game from drive to drive if things aren't going well. And then when you stack on top of that the concerns about the durability and more the soft tissue stuff. I think you mentioned with the hamstrings than the knee and the collarbone. I think there's real reasons to be worried here. If you're a GM going to try and draft him and you've got to sort through both the effort and the injury concerns, I think that'd be a tough call.
Yeah, I wondered watching some of the tapes. I'm really glad you pointed that. First of all, his his great catches are incredible. He does have some really high level, outstanding contested catch grabs and just acrobatic body, all that stuff. It's awesome. There were some games, you're right, where it just didn't look the same, and you're like, is he playing through an injury? Was what I thought. And then there's reporting that he still hasn't worked out. I mean, it's public knowledge, he still hasn't been able to work out from a hamstring injury that was back at the end of the season. And he played most of this season after that collarbone and the ACL, which was now, I think, 4 years ago, almost 3.5 years ago now. And that it's still preventing him from working out from teams. And that is unfortunate timing, but it's definitely a red flag.
Yeah, like I said, the collarbone one was freakish. The ACL one, well, he recovered from that. We got to see the athlete, and he's like an extraordinarily athlete when he's fully revved up. The hamstring stuff, I mean, during games, you really do watch, like, where is Jordyn Tyson? Oh, that's him. That's the number. Why is he not moving at the speed you expect of an elite prospect? His hamstring goes in-game regularly. You can see him pull it. You can see him tweak it. Then he comes back into the game, so he's trying to tough it out. But it will just go on him on a random go route where they're trying to clear out the coverage, and he really tries to get after it. It will just go. Then he comes back into the game and keeps trying. It's really hard to get a feel for where he's at health-wise, just even in the season, let alone where he's at now.
Right. So that's why I think for me it was I struggled a little bit, because I guess if I'm gonna deal with all that, I just want the great stuff to pop next level. And I don't know if he did that for me personally. All right, let's go to another evaluation or a superlative here. Let's go to the player most likely to get his GM fired. Ollie, this is rough.
Would that not just be Tyson?
I mean, it could have been. It could have been depending on the injury. I don't know if you have it. To me, this is sort of like a boomer bust type of pick.
But I think Tyson is boomer bust, and so it's not just the injuries. I think his 10 best plays, if you just put the compilation together, the 10 best plays, you can squint your eyes hard enough to convince yourself you're going to get Odell Beckham Jr. I just think if you put on the other 250 plays, you start saying, why is this guy so erratic? Why is he so loosey-goosey in the routes? The balance doesn't seem there all the time. It's just hard to get a sense for him down by down on who he's going to be as a prospect. But where he's going to go in the draft is going to be a valuable enough pick that you will be in trouble if there's durability questions. And then even when he's playing, you don't get the cop out of the durability. If he actually just plays and it was a bad eval and you don't get the soft tissue injuries and him being ruled out, that is when I think it starts to cost you your job.
That's why because this class is so deep, it just wouldn't surprise me. Like if he went where everyone expected, 13, 14, whatever it is, or if he's just falls and ends up being the 6th, 7th receiver and it's at the end of the first round, which is a totally fine outcome for him. I think if I had a choice here, and this might be my own bias, it would probably be Denzel Boston. And maybe it's because it's a type that he is a contested catch guy, but maybe it's unfair to just group him as that guy. Like he hasn't run the 40. His speed doesn't pop. He is not necessarily open that much, and I think he was a little sloppy when I watched sometime. But some also incredible contested catches. Am I overcorrecting to the N'Keal Harry's of draft times and thinking that this guy could be kind of in that mold where it might not totally work at the next level?
No, I agree with you. And I share the same bias. That archetype of receiver just isn't for me. The guys who are purely vertical elevation type receivers who are the contested catch darlings, it just doesn't translate to the league. We've been through Laquan Treadwell. We've been through J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. There's just a long history now. If you can't separate in college, you're not going to have hope of separating in the NFL. The contested catch rates almost inevitably drop in the NFL. If anything, the guys who aren't contested catch darlings who do separate at a high clip wind up being good contested catch guys in the NFL.
So, T. Higgins was a guy I loved coming out of Clemson. It's convenient that I remember all my correct evaluations, but because even though he sort of could have be put in the in that bucket. I just thought you saw more fluidity, and that his like verticality was just special in a way that, yeah, there's a lot of like one-on-one and one-handed catches, and it is cool to watch. He's gonna be a red zone guy for sure, but yeah, I just don't know if the ball winning stuff is gonna translate as well. What are the things you liked about Boston though?
It is the ball tracking. I mean, he dunks on people. I think he is special in the air. He really has an ability to just hold himself in the air for like 3 seconds, look around, check out what's going on, adjust the ball in flight, and then just slam it on the head of the corner. Like, that is where he wins. And it reminds me a little bit of Kenny Golladay, where you maybe will get the one season spike, and that's a certain brand of receiver that I think works for some offenses. It's not really how teams are playing anymore with all the condensed and congested stuff. I just think you got to be way more nimble. And I just don't think he's truly an NFL athlete in short area. I think that he cannot sink his hips. He struggles to decelerate and get out of breaks. And even if you are that vertical stretch guy, and we're going to try and play back shoulder fade game, and then we're going to try and play go shot game, you really have to be able to snap back to the quarterback out of the top of the step. You got to be able to be in the curls and the comebacks so that you can get the breaks that you need on the fade routes. He just can't really sink and get out of it. And if you watch him against the better athletes, against Michigan and Oregon, it really starts to show up that he just cannot separate snapping back to the quarterback and breaking out of the route.
There was another game, maybe versus Rutgers. I don't remember who it was, but you're right. The short area quickness, and that is maybe a type that I like. But that's why I think there will be a little more surprise in terms of where these guys go, because I just don't know if it's like that huge of a gap between the Tyson and Denzel Boston, who have pretty high things, and the Brazzell and even Chris Bell, who teams could just look at as these high ceiling guys. I don't know. I don't know if it's like a huge gap. Different teams, I think, could see it very, very differently.
I think it depends on what you need in the room, and what the draft philosophy is. Some teams just gather the receivers, we'll figure the room out afterwards. I think some teams are kind of more pinpointed on, we're lacking this kind of skill set, let's go get it. Boston is a guy who I think if you put him with a veteran, if he was just catching passes from Dak Prescott or Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, someone who's willing to just rip it. If someone is even, they are open. I'll just put it on the inside number. That's open enough for me. Guys who are willing to thread that kind of needle. His ability to kind of just play late off the snap, play late out of press, and just twist ever so slightly to create a throwing lane. I think that will work, and vet quarterbacks will love playing with him. I just wouldn't want to use the draft capital in the area he's going at to be like a foundational piece of an offense. I think he's more of a package-based player for a skill set that's actually pretty limited in the league.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, though, product of Washington, and just thinking about like quarterback, wide receiver combos, going back to Chris Bell. Let's bring back the Tyler Shuck, Chris Bell combo. I would be in for that as like a second round pick. I think that would be fun. Let's get positive. Let's make it time for charging into the offseason, presented by Apple Card. For all your game day purchases, download the Apple Card in the Wallet app today and start earning daily cash back on all your game day purchases, from tickets to tailgate munchies to merch, subject to credit approval. Let's give some flowers. A guy you think is way better than his consensus board ranking. We've hit most of the top guys so far, although not all of them.
Yeah, I really like Elijah Sarratt, Omar Cooper's running mate at Indiana, Fernando Mendoza's go-to target in must-have-it situations on most key third downs. And he, I think, will fall into the bucket of Malachi Fields, of Denzel Boston we just talked about, where people will view him as more of this vertical presence, contested catch, jump ball type guy. I just think he's more of a professional, well-rounded receiver in terms of getting off press, in terms of winning early in the route. I think he's got a little bit more short area fluidity than he's given credit for, so just a pure vertical guy. And I think he can just step in. If you're saying to me tomorrow, we're playing a playoff game, who's going to be the third receiver in the lineup? And I'm the Rams. I'm a team who really has a must-get-it game. He's the guy I would have the most confidence in this kind of second bucket that we're talking about, where from the real top part of the class to this real meat section where there's like 8-9 guys and you're picking different flavors of who you prefer, the guy I would trust the most is Elijah Sarratt.
I like that. He's right now 77th on the consensus board. And yeah, there is a cluster of guys late second and then into the third round, whether it's Jeremy Bernard, the just kind of solid receiver from Alabama. We mentioned Malachi Fields, a receiver from Notre Dame, Antonio Williams, who I know Daniel Jeremiah likes, from Clemson. Trey Lance's brother from North Dakota State's in the mix there as like a 3rd round pick. Danny Kelly from The Ringer likes him a lot. And so, okay, I like that you're planting your flag on Sarratt right there. And look, that was charging into the offseason, presented by Apple Card. Apply for the Apple Card in the Wallet app today. Start earning daily cash back on all your game day purchases, from tickets to tailgate munchies to merch, subject to credit approval. I was going to ask you for like a favorite complimentary. This could be anyone. We haven't hit Omar Cooper yet, if you've got one, but it could just be a favorite comp that you've got in the entire class, and we can save Cooper if he's not the perfect one.
I can give you a Cooper one. I would say Concepcion to Zay Flowers is probably, I think, the most crystal clear one in my mind. My Sarratt one is Keenan Allen, which I think that he's not going to quite be that caliber of player, but it's in that Mike Williams, Keenan Allen type mold. I think Omar Cooper is slightly lesser Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk at the peak of his powers.
Okay. It's funny because I feel like, Ayuk is always like a popular comp in general. Cooper is a guy that I look at and I just think that's gonna work. I could be wrong, but he just looks like an NFL player. Now, is like what that means production wise is going to depend on what system he's going to land in. He's not like a number one type of receiver. I like Danny Kelly's comp, which was Josh Downs with the power up mushroom boost, which like sounds like my favorite player ever. I just feel like he is gonna figure it out at the next level. That he's versatile, and like there's that famous touchdown, obviously that he had to kind of save Indiana's undefeated season that gave us Gus Johnson's greatest call of all time. But what I remember about that too is like he got that separation from the little wiggle that he had at the start of the route, which just froze the defender. And you see that all over his tape. And so he's just a fun player to watch. Like if my team took him in the late first round or wherever it's going to be, I really like Omar Cooper too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he is fearless. He is tough. He attacks the middle of the field like few other people in the class. I think he's probably slippery rather than truly explosive and fast. And he is unbelievable after the catch. I mean, the missed tackle rate, the toughness, the creativity, the balance. He's not a high flyer who's going to be a true vertical threat outside the numbers. Even from the slot, I think it's more of the deep overs and the crosses, and can you do some damage for us in space? But that is a type that works in the league. That is what everyone is chasing over and over again. If you cannot find Justin Jefferson, and it's a once in a franchise situation where you get Justin Jefferson, the next rung down is trying to find the maximum type of this player, and I think Omar Cooper fits in that bucket. Yeah,
and shout out to our guy Daniel Jeremiah, who had him very high right off the bat when he was just not too high in the overall consensus. He has him in the top 20. He's 26th right now on the consensus board, and I see that. No players are safe exactly coming into the NFL, but to me, he is a safe player, and I like that comp. Who do you think is just like the best route runner, if that's just like a big bucket?
I think that's Carnell. If you talk about the all-around, do they win in all three parts? Can they win quick off the snap? Can they kind of shake someone out of their cleats with a little shimmy shake, or by revving up and tempoing down? That's him. And then can they just kind of get the push off and the dirty work and the late hands to separate late in the route? I always go back to Michael Irvin saying you win in the NFL by winning late. There's no recovery time. You do whatever you got to do to win late in the rep. And I think Carnell Tate, in terms of efficiency, doing it in all three phases, I think it's him.
We had a couple others that you suggested. I don't know if this has already been ticked off. You had a superlative that you would be quitting as the coach if the GM did not get him on your team. I don't know if Sarratt already filled that bucket or you got another one.
Sarratt, if I was the Raiders, I would not break up the Fernando Mendoza-Sarratt chemistry. Maybe it's not as viable for other teams, but they have such unbelievable wink-wink chemistry, and he's going to go in the 70s. It's not going to be, you could go maybe early in the second round if a really good guy falls to you. But other than that, I would just wait it out, and I would make sure that you don't break up the Mendoza-Sarratt, and you would talk yourselves into, hey, he's not Jamar Chase. No one's Jamar Chase, but that Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow thing, translating it from college to the NFL, let's make life as comfortable as possible for the first overall pick.
Okay, I think we did it. Is there like a player that we have not mentioned? I think we've hit the consensus first and second round picks. I mentioned Jeremy Bernard and Malachi Fields, certainly could be in that mix. I don't know if there's any other like deep day 3 guy that you love. There was some guy last year I had never heard of that you wrote like a 30-minute love song to. I don't know whatever happened to him. That was not on anyone's. Who was it?
Efton Chisholm.
Was it Efton Chisholm?
It was Efton
oh my
Chisholm,
God.
yeah.
That was his origin story. You made it happen. Maybe the Patriots were listening. Some NFL teams are listening to the Read Optional. Check out Ollie's podcast with John Ledyard. They do great stuff. But yeah, give me your day 3 guy if you got one.
Day 3 guy would be Eric Rivers from Georgia Tech, who is an absolute speedster. He is tiny. I think we would both tower over him, and that may be a problem playing football on Sundays. But
I would not be towering over him.
It's possible for Eric.
I'm 5'6" if you round up. It was like I always overcorrected. It was like 5'5 3/4, but I listed 5'5" because I was like, I'm standing up for the short guys. I'm not trying to look taller on my license. Let's equality. I don't know. That's all I got to say.
He can fly. He moves at a different speed to pretty much anyone else. Whether he can actually get on the field or it's just special teams or something like that, I think is a bit of an open question. The other guy that we haven't hit on, I think, is Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, who is going to go probably early in the second round, I would guess, based on the physical profile. The thing that is wild about watching Ted Hurst, when you just kind of block out all the noise, it's Georgia State, they got the field, whatever, the style of running, just the pure style, and he's not the body type, and he's not the size, and he doesn't have the same level of change of direction, and I'm going to comp him here to one of the greatest players to ever play the position, but just the running, pure speed, maintaining the speed, running like a sprinter as opposed to a wide receiver. He has a little bit of Julio Jones in just the pure style of running. And I just cannot imagine the league will watch that. A guy of his size exploding down the field, ripping apart 4 deep coverage and not decide we're going for that early. If Brazzell goes and kind of the height, weight, speed guys go earlier than maybe they're expected by the consensus board, I imagine Ted Hurst will be pushed further up the draft.
I love that. One of the categories we skipped here just for time was the type of player the NFL can't quit, and he would absolutely fit that. I got to put him on my watch list because I can just see Julio running through the secondary. Just that, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a thing of beauty, and so is this show. As I mentioned, check out the Read Optional with Ollie. Thank you, Ollie. As I mentioned, we're going to be going through the entire draft with Ollie, helping us out on these shows, and yes, he's going to be joining me and Daniel Jeremiah for an upcoming show. I think that's going to drop next month, but I'm really looking forward to that as well. Also looking forward to getting back in the studio. Me, Jordyn, Colleen, Patrick, full house, bringing back our NFL First Date show from a year ago. We'll see you on Thursday.